Okay, I think I have this working now. You guys hearing this? Excellent. First time streaming, I honestly did not realize it was going to be so complicated to get multiple channels. I had to write my own max patch to do this. All right, got a few folks popping in here. I'm going to try to monitor this chat as this goes, so feel free to ask any questions as I kind of go through this stuff. I imagine some of y'all checked out the couple live from home sets I did, and pretty much used this same rig on both of those, and it's been kind of similar to what I've used over the years, although it's always evolving to include new things and new ideas and I don't know, whatever I'm currently working on. Hope everyone's doing all right. I know it's crazy day out there. I'm just gonna try to forget about all that for a little bit and focus on some music and nerding out on this gear. All right, I'm gonna make my way over here. Okay. I'll try to move this. Oh, that's too much. I'll try to move this webcam around to kind of follow the action. I'm going to start over here with the mixer. So this is what you would typically see at a DJ's, a kind of normal DJ set. You think of like two turntables or two CDJs or whatever a DJ is currently using. It's pretty standard. This is a kind of an old one. 4 channels. A lot of times people just use 2 of them. You know, if you have 2 turntables, you have 2 of those, and this crossfader is what's going in between that. I use it a little bit differently. So I do have these 2 channels, 3 and 4, kind of set up like a DJ setup. So over here on my computer, I'm running Ableton, and part of what's running in there is a couple different mixer outputs. So you probably won't be able to see it on here, but this channel is mix 1 and mix 2. So that is output through my audio interface, which is in a rack over here. And that feeds into this mixer on channel 3 and channel 4. So that way, if I'm running full tracks of something, or like sometimes a beat on one, something else on another, I can mix between them on these 2 channels. I really don't use the crossfader at all for the Beardo B set. I do it all usually with these faders, and just kind of mix as I go. Okay, still trying to keep an eye on that chat here. The other 2 faders are channels actually come from these modular racks over here. So not the greatest angle, but there's this bottom rack is mostly synth sounds, and that is an output feeding into one of these channels, and the top section is for drums, modular drums, and that feeds into another channel in the mixer. All right, coming back over here. So I'll make some actual sound here. Okay, so here's a little bit example. I'm feeding basically a stereo channel out of Ableton and it's showing up here on channel 3. So with this, you can do all the DJ mixing stuff you normally do, like EQ, put on effects over here. I definitely like to use sometimes like phaser or occasionally like reverb, stuff like this. And there's also an filter that you can apply the effects and filters to either like a single channel, like if you're mixing between something, or to the full mix. So right now it's only one thing, so you wouldn't really hear much difference. But if I have something going on one channel and I want to affect that audio, I can do that and leave the other clean. So the next part of the mixer represents a pretty big section of what I'm outputting, but I'm also using another couple channels, and that's for some of the other synth stuff. So one of the channels is for bass synth, one of the channels is for a poly synth, and one of the channels is for another synth. So those are just feeding into either if I'm recording my interface, or if I'm at a live show, it's going out to the front of house. So you would have the stereo mixer channels and then these 3 additional channels. Okay, so I'm going to move from the mixer over here to it's kind of the control area. Here we go. So there's really three controllers that I'm using to both control things in Ableton, to send things to my various synths, kind of control everything. The first one is up here, the launch pad, and that's really just, this is something you typically see in a lot of modern sets that use Ableton, because it just lines up with what you have on your screen. If I press a clip here, I have it set to play the clip in Ableton. So it's a little big for my setup, but I have found it's kind of the easiest thing to serve its purpose, and it's nice to keep it separated from the Monome stuff, so I can do quick changes here and still be working with the Monome. So you won't really be able to see it in the screen with this contrast, but I'm usually setting up something it's launching multiple things at once. It's launching audio, but it might also be launching controls that interact with my other devices. So it might change the function of what's happening here. Anyway, that's getting a little bit into the weeds. I can get to that later. But that's the nice thing about Ableton is keeping multiple things synced up at once using the Launchpad and the Ableton setup. The next thing is this set of basically 24 knobs that control a bunch of things in my set. It's this thing called Naked Boards. That's all it is. It's 24 MIDI knobs that I can assign for whatever. I'm surprised I don't see more products like this. I think I had to order this from like Russia or something, just like paying some guy via PayPal and hoping it showed up. But it's, you know, it's so simple, but all these knobs is great for me because I really like to customize everything. And I'll get into a little bit of what the controls are. This down here is called a Monome, and it's essentially just, it's a grid 8x16 LED lights, and it's something that's, you know, completely programmable in the sense that it's really just buttons so that light up. So between this and the computer, and I can program it to do whatever I want if I'm able to figure out a way to do it. So I think of this as like three-dimensional coordinates. You basically have to send information to this machine to make it light up that says, like, all right, if you want this button to light up right over here, you would have to send the coordinates 0, 0. So that says like the first row, the first column, and then the third piece of information is the amount of brightness you want to send from 0 to 15. So 16 levels of brightness. And then what it's sending into the computer is basically anytime you press something, it's also sending a packet of information that's 3 numbers. It's the same information, the coordinates, like 0, 0. And then if you're pressing it down, it's sending a 1. And when you let it up, it sends a 0. So in between all of that, you can do so many different things. So I've been developing this program of my own for years now to use for these sets. It starts on this page, which I use mostly for writing beats. So this is a sequencer section, and I'm using that to write beats as I go. So I'll do one really quick, and then I'll kind of break down what I'm doing. This swing seems backwards. Okay, so that was basically, it was pretty quick, but the idea is there's a kick drum sound, a snare drum sound, hi-hat sound, and an open hi-hat sound. 4 different channels that I can program really fast in this 4x4 grid. So this stuff is linked to both the things inside of Ableton and to this modular rack. So when I'm launching this kick drum sound, it's actually this module that's over here. So it's got this really, really nice analog sound on a big sound system. It goes super deep. It's really rattles the stubs. It's nice. The hi-hat is also a module. Over here. I had some modulation on that. Then the snare drum I actually do inside of Ableton with samples. I find that makes it a little bit easier for me to get a wider variety, and that's where some of these controls come in. So this knob I'm using for level. This knob I'm using to select the sound. So I've got, I think, like 5 available sounds in there. And then I can actually turn on some reverb on that as well. And then similar thing for the open hi-hat. I keep that in Ableton too. And I have like level and decay and the tuning, so I can change up the sounds as I go on that. And I have a bunch of stuff set up so I can like clear and launch a bunch of things that are like all the notes at once, or write a pattern and save it and recall it. A couple like preset things of like really basic beats that I like to come back to. So if I'm like building up something, I can quickly come back to something really simple. And then a similar setup to that drum sequencer is right next to it, and it's for, I call it the Percussion Sequencer, and it's a similar idea, using a 4x4 grid to make 16-step sequences, using more percussion sounds. So this bank is kind of based on what I would do if I was doing like modular drums, but it's all, the sounds are all inside of Ableton. So like a noise, which I also have some controls over, like the decay, the attack, how it's filtered. So I find that really, really nice for creating some interesting grooves really quick. Some other kind of like sort of 808-y tom things that I can also like tune and add delay to. Yeah, so if we kind of put those together. So some nice like ways to get into some like improvised things without having to rely on something that's already written, and getting a lot of like live control over those elements. Let me check in with the chat real quick. Yes, programming this was somewhat of a nightmare, but definitely a huge learning process, and kind of like taught me a lot of things in Max, and even really about synthesis in general, and just kind of thinking about signal flow and logic and how things have to fit together. So it was quite the project, but having this unique setup to me kind of is really the most fun part of these sets. So part of these too, there's some kind of like overall controls. I was already doing some of that, like clearing out the patterns, like a hold and release will clear this pattern, or there's things like this button mutes the kick drum. So if I have a beat going and I want to drop out the kick drum, I can just do it with that button and then bring it back in. And this button mutes that whole sequencer. So if I have like a percussion groove going and the drum beat going, I can mute them individually. So that's the first part of this. That's a lot of times what I'm doing when I'm on this page. There's other like control section down here that changes some things, switches between some pages. But like when I'm performing, it's usually like writing these patterns. The other setup for these sequencers is instead of sequencing it, you can play the sounds live. Like if I switch over to this mode, so I have those set up to repeat on a quantizer that you can actually change the speed of here. So, and you can do that all while a beat's going. So. And then you can also loop those ideas. So I'm gonna loop the percussion over that. So that's nice when you want to get a little bit more hands-on instead of programming. You can just program up a loop or play a loop real quick, and then that you can clear those out or record over them, do a bunch of things. The other page that I use a lot is this page, which I call the Arpeggio page, and it's this kind of like, it sort of like becomes my keyboard for all these other synths. It sends MIDI information to the modular, to my poly synth that I'm using, to all this stuff, and I can play it live. So I'll demonstrate a little bit of that. Someone's asking about going a little bit deeper about mapping this pad. So it's not really mapping per se. It's not like the launch pad where you're just sending one MIDI note and putting it in Ableton and saying like, okay, this note is always going to launch this clip or do this function. I have this all running into Max, so every button can do a variety of things depending on like what page I'm on, what the gesture is. Like I have some things programmed for like hold and release, or a double press will do something different. That's kind of the beauty of Max is, you're dealing with just something really simple, which, like I said before, is just this packet of information of what's the coordinate of the button and are you pressing it down or letting go of it. So, once you get into some things like, okay, time a press to how, when it's released, and if you press two of them under this time limit, have that do something different than if you're holding it, releasing it. So that frees you up to do all kinds of different things. So that's how I'm able to do these things. Like a double press here will give me 16 steps, and a hold and release will clear it, where just a single press is switching between what sound I want. So it gives me like a lot of capabilities for doing a lot of things really quickly in a small space. And, similar thing like this, like I have these pages programmed where I just jump over this other page and I'm in a completely different zone of what I'm doing. So this is back to the Arpeggio page, and this will kind of start to touch into how I have all this stuff kind of connected together. You have to think of it kind of as the computer is sort of this distribution center where it's taking in information from what I'm pressing on the Monome, taking it into Max, and that's coming into Ableton through this device over here, and then using you're not going to be able to see anything on that screen. I need some kind of screen share between these two computers. But basically, when it comes in from Max, it's coming in as mostly just a set of a bunch of MIDI information. Sometimes it's sending things that are kind of controlling Ableton, like muting and unmuting channels or changing effects. But a lot of what's being sent is just MIDI information. Like that's how all these drums are triggered. All these notes are going to be sent, and there's just like a lot of routing in Ableton to get everything to the right place. But it's just this big stream of information from Max. And then, so from the computer, it's distributing that information to all these different synths, and those create the sound that come back through the mixer. So if I start off over here, I have this kind of divided into 3 different arpeggiators, which I select between using, back up a little bit, and I've got to get better at figuring out where this camera's pointing. So the first one, so I have this set up so any of these can be routed anywhere. Actually, this like matrix over here is used to sort of as this like kind of like virtual pin matrix to route the MIDI that I'm generating to different synths. But I generally, for Bearded Bees, keep this routing as it is. So the first one goes to my bass voice. So so that's sending MIDI there. I'll get into a little bit more of the specifics, but the sound is being generated over here. Oh. Okay, so that's the Moog Minotaur. That's one part of it, and then there's another module down here that's also part of the bass chain. So I'll get a little something going here. So that's two different bass synths that I have routed together in one VCA, and I'm mixing together, or choosing one or the other to kind of change the sound or get to whatever sound I want. I'll get into a little bit more of those details later if I'm still going after all this, or people aren't too bored. But the in and out of, or the in and out, not really a good metaphor to use when there is actual a lot of in and out happening. This is set up as basically it's kind of like a keyboard where instead of being laid out horizontally, every octave is a row. So you have a 7-note scale that you can play on a row, and then if you're going this direction, you're going to get octaves. And the scale, the root note of the scale is set by this shape over here. It might be kind of hard to see in this video, but it's basically laid out like a keyboard. So if I have just an arpeggio going, so that's your, a minor arpeggio, and currently it's in C, but here's just stepping up chromatically the root note. So this little keyboard allows me to set the scale of whatever I'm playing. You don't have to do arpeggios. You can just play it as is. And you can also record loops, again, similar to what I did before. So I'll get a quick beat going. And I'll record a loop. So it's basically just recording my button presses and playing them back. But I can arpeggiate those and then just mess with the sound. You can overdub. So that's my basic control of note information. I forgot to mention that you can change the scale too, so it doesn't always have to be a straight minor scale. It can be, I currently have a program for 4 different scales, but you can change that up however you need. So similar idea, this Arpeggiator, it can be sent to the various synths I have. So if I go to the second one, that's sending information to the Modular Rack. I'll get the camera on it better later, but this rack down here is my kind of main upper synth voice. And then the third voice is for my poly, which is, if I can get there, this synth up here, the Deckard's Dream. So I can switch between all those different synths and do them simultaneously. So I'll do a quick thing where I'll start with writing something on the bass, and then I'll add in a little bit of the modular, then I'll add in a little bit of the poly. It sounds like my poly needs to be tuned. I'll do that in the background while I go to the next thing. Luckily, this thing tunes itself, which is pretty magic. So that there's a lot of like little other things, but that's the kind of basic when I'm playing the Monome. I'm switching between the different synths that I'm performing on, or writing beats and controlling those things. And the whole idea of the program is just to be able to do it as fast and as live as possible. So, you know, hopefully if everything's working right, I can just really be like in the moment and trying to do something creative instead of trying to like move around to a different instrument and like now I'm playing this, but does it give me access to this other thing? Anyway, it's like trying to keep everything like close and accessible. Question: do I ever get lag from Max? No, Max is, since it's just processing MIDI. It's really extremely fast for what I'm doing. I would say there's more processing that has to go into dealing with audio in the digital realm than MIDI information, which is just like these really tiny pieces of like numbers, really. Okay, so what I kind of laid out there with the ability to change these scales and change a key, all that, I don't want to have to do that all the time. So one other feature I built in was inside Ableton, I use a channel that you can see here on the launch pad next to this. So here's a clip of a beat, but next to it I have another clip, and that doesn't send any audio. Instead, it sends MIDI notes to my Max program that change it to do different things. So if you can see on here, if I'm on, I'll go up to key of G. So that's would set my Arpeggiators to be root key of G. But this song I'm going to go into is in the key of D. So I just have this set up, and if you can see when that launches, it changes here. So it's kind of like pre-changes things I'm doing, so I don't have to go through extra steps of changing the scale and the key. It's already gonna do that for me automatically, or it can change if I need the beat to be swung or straight, those kind of things. Basically just sending a MIDI note into a couple different MIDI notes into Max, and Max decodes those notes and says like, okay, go make these changes, and those changes are reflected here, but yeah, also in Max. So it kind of just speeds things up. So sometimes I also have things that are clips that are sending to these various synths that are pre-written. So like for instance here, this row, here's a loop. And if I want to manipulate that bass sound, since I'm just playing a full stereo loop here, there wouldn't be really a good way. But I have programmed up the exact same bass pattern. So if I take the low end out of the track, then I can manipulate the bass on my synths. And you know, same thing, same idea with the drums. If I can make sure they're synced. So now I have all the low cut out here on the mixer, but I'm adding it back in through my kick drum and my bass, so I can really manipulate some stuff there, filter it out or do whatever. So I think that kind of brings me over to the modular. So I'm going to move this camera to get a little bit better view of this setup, and I'll start to break that down a little bit. Okay. Put a laser on the camera. That's a good idea, I think, although it seems a little complicated. All right. This section up here is for the drums. So I already demonstrated that a little bit, the kick drum and hat. Got some controls here, and then these I have some modulation set up on this. The kick drum or the hat right now is currently getting this LFO that's synced to the clock from Ableton. So if I turn that up, you get this synced tuning. Which that's kind of fun. Then these two sounds, the kick drum and the hat, are mixed here with this mixer, and that's also getting this feed here from my interface of the digital sounds. So like the snare drum and the hat, the open hat, like I talked about before, that are generated in Ableton, that comes in on its own channel. And then I have those malted here, which basically just means copied. And so one channel is mixed here, so this is just the exact copy of this, the clean channel. And then the other is sent to these pedals that I have on top of here. It's a distortion pedal and a reverb pedal, so you can really mangle it if you want to, and you can mix them here. So that's kind of fun to do some like build ups and then drop out. But I'm just a fan of distorted drum sounds, so I really like keeping this mad distortion on here, and then this reverb just for making it sound weird. So the effects chain is mixed back in on its own channel in this mixer, and then this mixer gets sent to this output, and then that lets me send it into the DJ mixer. So kind of 3 different mixers to get it all going, but it lets me manipulate things in a little bit more detail. down here. Get the whole thing shot in here. All right, this is my main performance modular rack that I use for Beer2Bs, but also for Lotus and OctaveCAD as well. It changes very infrequently now. I feel like I have it pretty set, so I'm not always like taking it apart, which is nice. Kind of have like a setup that I can keep somewhat consistent. So it's this might get a little bit technical, but I'm gonna try to kind of explain the setup here. So this module on the far left, the Poly N Poly 2, is the main way that I'm able to communicate between my software and this modular synth. So USB cable is plugged in here, and that is a MIDI to CV conversion. So when I'm sending MIDI information to out of that channel that is being seen here, it can interpret that as and then turn it into gates, which basically just say like turn a note on or and off, and then the pitches. So the way I have this set up is for a number of different voices. So when I'm playing this over here, this is just the kind of the first voice. And so over here you have what's called a VCO, voltage controlled oscillator. If it's just free running, it's just a note. So when I'm playing different notes over here, this connection between this module and this module is changing the notes. There's a second VCO right next to it, and this is a pretty standard kind of like Moog voice where you have two of the same oscillators and you're combining them together either on the same note. So this one, it's an octave higher right now if I change it up. Or I have it set up to change to a fifth and to a harmony. Oh, there's the harmony. There's in unison. And there's the fifth, so. And then those are sent, the information from VCOs are routed, well, first to a tuner, which just helps me keep them in tune. If you turn them on here, you can switch between these to check the tuning. Those go into a VCA, which is a voltage control amp, and that's what's creating the shape of the sound, or really kind of keeping it, turning it up. It's really shaped by these envelopes. So every time I press a note, it triggers an envelope, and the envelope opens up the VCA. So you can make it short or really long, or have this slow attack. And then those all go out into a filter. So a filter is, you'll recognize the sound immediately. If I have the right thing going, I don't. So here's filtered all the way down. Filtering up. And then I also have just white noise routed in here. Which really can help make a sound more percussive. Or to do sweeps. White noise is super useful. I'm actually right now sending a little bit of it into the first VCO just to add a little bit of subtle randomness to that VCO as well. It gives it like a little bit more natural quality. Those are mixed down here as a mixer, and they're sent into this Strymon unit, which is for reverb and delay. So I'll get that same ARP going again. So that's dry. That's with some spring. If I slow this down, you can really hear the delay. Or if if you take off the ARP, you can really hear the delay. The same information that's going to these VCOs to change the notes also goes to another module in here, which is kind of it's like its own voice in one module. That basically means like kind of all the stuff I described, like the VCA, the envelope, it's all in this one module. So that has a kind of different sound. So I can mix between, this synth, which is the Basilamus by Noise Engineering, and this other more traditional kind of Moog style voice, and those all get mixed together and then go into the DJ mixer. And then I talked about a little bit before, the bass stuff, the Moog Minotaur and the Manus are both sent into this VCA here. So this VCA is mixing those two sounds together, but with one added bonus, and that is to create a side chain. So if you're a producer, you've probably heard this term before, but a side chain is just using some kind of trigger to change something else. And the way you usually hear it in modern context is for a kick drum to trigger a compressor. So it basically will duck sounds underneath the sound of a kick drum. So what I have going on is an envelope coming from Ableton using what's called CV tools. So basically it's just generating this electrical signal that's being fed in here that turns this down, and it's triggered by the kick drum. So I'll demonstrate that. So if this is completely opened up, it's just making a free running sound. But if I start up the kick drum, and I'll turn the sidechain off, so you can really hear it when I turn it up. So that's really great for dance music, to let the low end of the kick drum information in by ducking the bass underneath of it. So I can control the amount with this attenuator, and sometimes do some cool stuff like that where I turn this bass sound so it's just kind of free running, and do something underneath it with the kick. the bass voice. Check in on chat here. Okay. The other thing I was doing was I have this joystick controller routed into some of the controls of this Manus, so that's, I really like being able to manipulate it that way. This get some fun sounds there. One nice thing about this joystick is you can record and loop the movements as well. So I actually have it clocked up to stay in sync with Ableton. So basically it's a trigger every 2 bars. So I can make some movements and then have it play back. Fun way to get some pretty crazy sounds pretty quick. All right, I see I've gone already about an hour. I'm sure this is maybe a little complex for some people, but thanks for checking it out. The couple of the other elements that I didn't mention are... Oh, let me get this over there. This synth over here is called the TB03. So it's a modern version of the TB303, this really classic acid sound. So if you're familiar with acid house at all, you'll know the sound of the 303, but it's in tons of electronic music. I really like the sound of it. It's this kind of like really resonancy synth sound. Typically a saw wave, but a square wave too is also used. I actually kind of prefer this to the old one because with the MIDI controls I can do some kind of interesting things. Like I have it programmed up so I can do octave changes using these knobs. So and I also have it set up to change the release time using MIDI because the release time of the actual synth it's already set to maximum, which is really short, which is kind of the sound of it, but I do kind of like hearing it extended sometimes. Which I would not be able to do without MIDI controls over that synth. And then right behind it is this Memory Man pedal, which I have the my polysynth, the Decker's Dream, routed into. So that's what's called a bucket brigade delay. This really like warm analog delay. And one thing I really like about it is it'll go into self-oscillating feedback really easily. And then once I have this controlled pitch, I can change the delay time to just kind of play the pedal. So that's really fun when I jam a little bit over a beat. Put this mic back in the holder. I like that for definitely these more like pad sounds, like just kind of filling out a sound, and like longer melodic stuff, and just kind of like, yeah, making these like washes with the memory man. Yeah, I think it kind of pretty much covered the basics of what I'm doing. The more involved stuff kind of really gets into some weeds of what's going on in Ableton, but that's kind of an overview if you're watching my videos and I'm moving around between these different things, what I'm doing. So yeah, maybe I'll do some more going into depth about like how I put together the Ableton sets, or cut this stuff to work together, but that is a general overview. So thanks for everyone who stuck with, and if there are any more questions, hit me up. I'll check out the chat before I wrap it up here. Actually, maybe I'll play a little something to go out. So this will show a little bit of kind of what I was talking about. This first clip just launched the beat. This clip over here changed the key for me and set the sequencer to swing, so that like if I bring in hats like this, I'm gonna have them swing as opposed to a straight sound like that. And the mixer, so you can see on the mixer I have the music here and the output from the modular drums here. So if I want to filter them all, that's kind of the whole point of routing all this stuff in a mixer is being able to do these like full mix tweaks, or kind of cut in and out of different things. Then you can see those lights blinking on the launch pad. I use follow actions to have a lot of things kind of run into each other, kind of keep going, or I can jump around and stuff is going to still automatically run it if I want, and also launch multiple things at the same time. So if I skip ahead to this next clip, you can see there's two clips blinking right now. One is for the audio and one is for MIDI going to the bass synth. So I'll launch those. So in the track, this is just the track, but I have that same bass sound, the same bass notes going to my synth. So if I bring that back in, I can manipulate that. And then you'll see one other clip all the way over here on the left that's on the same row. That's something that's going to send to the 303. So just like a loop that I have programmed up in advance. So the whole idea for me is to have this combination where I can write stuff on the fly, but also use some things that are preset to be able to like move around really quickly and have stuff that makes sense musically, if that makes sense. I can write stuff, loop it, or just play something I have and focus more on changing the sound. All right, I think I'm going to wrap it up. Thanks a lot, guys, for tuning in. Stay safe and healthy out there, and hope to see you back on the road sometime in 2021. Peace.